Hello, everyone. This is going to be my 8th political podcast, and today's theme is going to be sort of on the future. So the themes we're going to be covering sort of deal with more longer-term prospects. The first thing we're going to cover is sort of the Obamacare website, problems with that, how to fix it, how big of a concern it really is. The second issue we're going to cover is going to be SNAP, which is better known as food stamps, and the prospects for that in the future, especially with the recent cuts. And finally, the third and probably longest part of our podcast today is going to be a discussion of the 2013 elections and what that means for the future. And today I have another special guest. Last week I had Andrew Arrington, and this time I have Andrew Turnage, and I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hello, I'm a senior here at American University studying political science. I have a concentration in policy, so a lot of this stuff is right up my alley, and I'm looking forward to discussing it today.
All right. Thanks for coming on, Andrew. So the first thing we're going to discuss is the website. So I'll just say something real quick, and then I'll hear your response. So, the website is a problem. There's no doubt about that, and I think Democrats, have to admit they made a mistake. I think the problem was they rolled it out too quickly. Government, I agree, is pretty bad on website things, at least compared to more sophisticated companies like Microsoft or Google, and I think they were just rushed. There wasn't enough testing like a lot of other companies do, or troubleshooting, and I think that led to some serious consequences.
I'd agree that the website failure is an important thing to look at, but I don't necessarily think it's the Democrats' fault. It is a bureaucratic agency in charge.
It's not a political fault. Yeah. It's more of a technological.
Yeah, it's a silly problem that shouldn't have happened, and it does a lot actually to hurt them, and it's very damaging to the reputation of the new plan already to have these failures. And the public, which the vast majority don't know a lot about website programming, they look at it and they see something and they see it as a failure of the system, which is actually the dangerous part politically for the Democratic Party.
Sure, I would agree. I think it's out in the open now, and they're going to work into it. I think they're now actually recruiting the big tech companies like Microsoft and Google to help them fix that, which, believe it or not, it's actually something I advocated from the beginning. Before this whole thing, I was like, government should go into more using private contracting for websites and stuff. It's a political position I've had for a while. Not that everything should be privatized, but certain things are better done by private companies, and at least follow some of those protocols. There's a lot more troubleshooting that happens in the private sector than I think that happened here. I think there was only 2 weeks of testing.
Yeah,
if I'm wrong.
It was not a long period of time.
Yeah, so I know you have some technological background. Do you have any sort of things to say on that end of the website?
I definitely have to agree that bringing in private companies to do the website program would have been a better idea. The government doesn't attract the high-level programmers that these companies attract, and there's a lot more incentive in these companies to do a better job. It's their livelihood. With the government, it's very hard to fire somebody if they do a poor job. So I'm not saying that government workers don't work hard. Of course they do, but there's a difference in pay, and there's a difference in benefits, and there's a difference in work environment. And it's clearly better for programmers in the private industry. So all the best ones go there, and it would make a lot of sense if the government had used the contract, as you said, to give it to one of these companies. And you were correct. I did read somewhere that they are tapping Google and I think Apple or something like that, and they are consulting these companies for help, because this is a big deal. It is important, and they're recognizing that.
Yeah, I don't want to deviate too far off track, but going to what I was proposing earlier, I think the government could, out of charity, or have these private companies, some of the people in them, do it for free, the VA backlogs, and digitize those files. I thought that would be a very productive solution, because it's helping soldiers, so it could be considered charity. A lot of these tech guys wouldn't mind doing it, especially with the large numbers, and if you digitize the files, it just makes the whole system easier.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you to a point. I mean, a lot of these computer programmers probably would be game to do that. I mean, it's something that helps a lot of people who need the help. Obviously, veterans are a big deal in our country. It's political suicide to argue against them or against their benefits, and a lot of computer programmers and technology people in general recognize what those people have gotten them. And I think it's just like any other charity where people always show up. It might not be as many as the government would hope, but somebody would show up.
Sure.
And it would definitely help with the problem.
Yeah, I agree. And going back to the Soul site itself, I mean, obviously it's a problem, but I think in at least the medium term, within the next, 3-6 months, hopefully the kinks can be sort of worked out and it gets back to normal. Because I have heard on the few people who have been able to use it successfully that it's actually not that bad, but obviously they're a select minority, and sort of fixing all the problems is sort of the main priority, but I don't think it's going to. I think the Democrats will recover politically from this before the 2014 elections because I think the site will probably be fine by then.
Well, the thing that's most important to remember with this is the enrollment period ends March 31st of 2014, so they have to recover quickly.
Yeah.
And that's before all the elections, so they will have time to fix everything. So it's bad and it stinks for them right now, but it's not going to destroy them for the midterms.
Yeah.
And then the other important thing to note right now, though, is the enrollment figures are so little. And they were hoping for 24 million enrollees, which right now I think they have less than 1 million. I'm not sure what the current most data is. So that's actually something else we're going to have to watch.
Yeah, of course. And then obviously extra provisions kick in as soon as 2014 hits. So it's all going to be interesting. Again, like I've always mentioned, we won't really truly know the effects of Obamacare for several years out. There's just so many different components. Some of these things don't go into 2014, some not even until 2016. And with the site being as it is, I think, it's just we don't have enough data to really call it one way or the other. Yeah. But I think that's if you want to say anything else on that, I think we can move on to our second topic.
I guess the only other thing that I'd like to mention with this website is with the failure of it, that might really hurt public confidence in enrolling. Sure. So if they don't fix this quickly, they're going to have a massive problem with the enrolling, which is going to... You can't have an insurance plan without enrollees. That's how insurance works. And if you don't have enough people in the pool, the premiums are going to be incredibly high, and it's not going to be effective, and that defeats the system. So if they're not able to recover quickly enough, the plan could fail. Yeah. And that's something that I'm sure that is in the back of all the Democrats' minds, even though I'd almost predict they're not that worried.
Yeah, and apparently some states' sites have been pretty good. Apparently Kentucky's website was actually considered one of the best. So if they use that model and sort of incorporate that, I think, even though it's bad now, they could possibly recover. But with that being said, I think it's important that we move on to our second topic, and that's going to be the SNAP program, which deals with food stamps for millions of Americans. So I'll let you actually have your first word. Maybe you want to give a background on the cuts and your thoughts.
Well, SNAP, and it's also that's an acronym for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, just for any listeners who might not know that. And it is commonly called food stamps. It was changed in 2008 from that name to the current name. But I think the important thing to note about this program is it's meant to be a supplement and not it's not meant to be the breadwinner. And a lot of people forget that when they talk about how it only gives you $4.50 a day. So there's this thing called the SNAP Challenge, actually, where people try to live off $4.50 a day for a week or something. And it's actually something I'm participating in next week just to see and just to show that it is possible.
I think Cory Booker did that, right?
Yeah, Cory Booker did it. I know a couple congressmen who are Democrats have done it just to prove a point. Because it is unfortunate, but a lot of families do rely upon this as their sole way to buy food. And I'm not advocating for not feeding those families. I do believe in cutting the program because I think it's grown exponentially since early 2000 under George W. Bush and then Barack Obama, the presidents, of course. And I think that's a problem in itself, and I think that's something that needs to be addressed because SNAP wasn't designed to do this.
All right, I guess we're gonna have some disagreements, but that's good. I like disagreements. Yeah. And again, if any of our listeners have comments, disagree, or anything with either me or Andrew, please comment, link, anything. So I disagree. Now I agree that it's definitely meant to be a supplement, but for many families, especially with this unemployment, there's almost no jobs that they can find, and having this basic, assurance of just some food, I think is very essential. And just cutting it, because I don't really see a real big alternative. Can you think of an alternative to this program, possibly?
Well, obviously, I'm not an advocate for big government in the first place. I very much believe in as little government involvement as possible. I'm not somebody who believes in no government involvement. I think that's silly, personally. But I think with this program, it's overstepping what it was designed to do. It's like taking a car and making it do something it's not designed. It's like taking a Corvette off-roading. You're not supposed to do it. It's not designed to do it. You can do that, but it's damaging. Yeah. And I think that's something what we're doing with this program is we're making it do something it wasn't designed to do in the first place, and we're expecting it to work.
Yeah. Now, I do have some major points to address. So the thing is, even we in this country pay workers so little that actually billions, or I forget the exact number, but fast food workers actually receive many SNAP benefits.
Yeah.
And so even though they're working, showing initiative, showing they're not just sitting on their butts all day, they still have to rely on this, and even then it's sometimes not enough, showing drastic disparities. So I guess this, again, we're going off tangents, but it all relates. So I think part of the problem is also increasing the minimum wage. You can't have one and the other. You can't have a really low wage and expect people not to get any of these government benefits, or vice versa. So I think a smart solution, which would prevent people, or not prevent, but sort of reduce the amount of people on this program, while at the same time helping the economy, would be simply institute a living wage, or at least increase the one we have now.
I'd have to disagree with you personally. The way I view it, and a lot of other people do, and of course you will disagree with this, is I see a program like SNAP allowing the fast food chains to pay them less. They know that their workers will be able to rely upon this program that exists in order to survive. And I've even heard from people who aren't Republicans, mind you, Democrats, that said that corporations like McDonald's and Walmart actually make plans for their workers to go on these programs, and that's how they're supposed to survive. And I see that as wrong. I think a company should pay you what you deserve, because these people do work hard. I'm not an advocate for a higher minimum wage myself. I believe in keeping out of the market. I understand where you're coming from. There needs to be some kind of balance.
Yeah.
Because if workers aren't paid enough, they can't afford food, and if a program like SNAP doesn't exist, then they can't get their food.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, I think a program like SNAP encourages a company to pay them less in the first place.
Well, that's I guess my argument would be that's why we have a minimum wage in the first place, and that's why I think it should be raised, because it increases the purchasing power of individuals. They can buy more things. They can rely less on these benefits. You're not gonna probably like this either, but another solution is essentially create another works progress program administration where people are paid at a minimum wage with basic government benefits, but they go towards rebuilding infrastructure. So instead of just being on welfare and not working, there's right there a direct government job that goes towards rebuilding infrastructure. And there's data from the Fed, so San Francisco Fed actually, showing that every $1 investment in public infrastructure yields a $2 return, showing that there is a positive side to it. But I do think I would advocate that the government has to step in, because a lot of these private companies will abuse the system. But I think we're going to have a disagreement there. So.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up a works program. Obviously, they've done that before, and there's plenty of data to show the benefits of it. I read a lot from the Cato Institute, which, to the listeners, that's a libertarian think tank. They're fiscally, if you don't know what libertarians are, it's fiscally conservative, socially liberal is generally how they're characterized. And they're also known as minimal government, live and die by the Constitution with as little interpretation as possible. But the big assumption with a works project is that the government's going to spend the money more efficiently than a private business.
Yeah.
And that's something where I've seen in research where a government dollar spent, the private industry could spend it more wisely. And it's I've read data from Cato that suggests that for every $1 spent by the government, it's a waste of $1.50 by a private business. And that's something that we need to keep in mind. Obviously, there are infrastructure problems in the United States. I don't quite believe they're as bad as some reports might suggest, but they are there. But I'd advocate, I think, more for a private contract-based system, and that would encourage job growth, and at the same time, it would take control away from the government and take money away from the government, which I think is important, because a lot of what I've read suggests that private entities spend it better. And a lot of people like to point out that they won't want to spend the money. But that's why we need to create the economic conditions where they will spend the money. And right now, they don't exist, I believe, because of the government regulation. You will, of course.
Yeah, I'll disagree. We can go back and forth all day. It's just some minor things I'd want to say is that I actually read that for every dollar spent by the government, only 2 pennies is actually wasted on bureaucratic inefficiency. So obviously different numbers there.
Yeah.
But I have heard, and I'm pretty sure this is confirmed, I forget the exact source, but Medicare administrative costs are actually lower than comparable insurance plans of that age in terms of administrative costs. So I do think the government can play a good role, especially if it goes into something that's good, like public works, as opposed to something that has little value. Of course, the jobs have to be there. It has to be a real demand. The government can't create jobs out of thin air, but I would argue that infrastructure does mean that there are real jobs to be had. But again, we can go back and forth, and I just think my idea is that a lot of private companies won't spend the money, like you said, and I don't think that's because of regulation or anything. I think that's just because the shareholders want to keep as most of the money as possible. But we're gonna have probably a lot of disagreement on that. So, do you want to move on to the third topic, or do you have any final?
Well, there's a few other things with SNAP.
Okay, yeah, let's talk
like
about that.
touch. I don't know if you read that article I sent you.
Yeah, I
the
did.
Paper. I guess you saw the history of SNAP from 2000 to now.
Yeah, a
and
big
the expansion
increase
of the system.
Yes.
I guess I was kind of curious about what you thought of that increase.
Yeah.
And obviously the writer is slanted.
Yeah.
He's pushing an agenda, as any paper
Sure.
is.
Well, the big problem with that is you have to account for the recession. Of course, there's going to be more people on food stamps because there's a lot more people unemployed. So I think you can't just look at data you have to look at data with context and in wake of the recession and all the various economic problems. Of course, more people are going to be on SNAP. It's not a political program, or I don't even think it's a fraud or abuse program. I simply think the more people on SNAP just reflects the more people unemployed and needing assistance.
I guess then I'm curious. My other question might be then, how do you explain how the numbers haven't been going down? A lot of people say we're in a recovery right now, and that the recession is over and all that great stuff.
Sure.
Because in every other instance after a recession or a depression, enrollment figures in SNAP have gone down almost right away.
Yeah. So I would argue that we're still recovering, but it's still a long way, so that'd be one of my responses. The second one is, even though some people have been able to find employment, it's been the fast food, sort of lower wage jobs where they could still be eligible for SNAP since they don't make that much money. Just again, the 1960s minimum wage is higher than it was today, adjusted for inflation. So, I mean, obviously this goes back to our whole disagreement, but I do think that even if you have a job, and that's the problem, is that back in the past in those recessions, they increased the minimum wage, people were able to get good jobs, but now it seems like the only jobs available seem to be the lower end ones. At least the people who tend to be on SNAP would probably be applying and getting those jobs, and that still means they're eligible for those benefits, so you're not going to see a drastic decrease.
Yeah, I understand the point you're making. It's, you can make numbers say anything in this world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for every 10 papers that say this, there's 20 that argue against it.
Yeah, I think it was Truman that said, give me 100 economists and they'll all point in different directions or something.
Yeah, it's insane. But we can move on to the next one. I mean, obviously the elections are going to take time.
That's going to be big. So this third topic is sort of just a cover of the 2013 elections, what happened, what it means, what are the prospects for the future, how is it going to affect 2014, 2016, stuff like that. So let's cover your home state first, New Jersey.
Yeah.
So your boy Christie won, not surprisingly.
Well, that race was interesting in that the Democratic Party didn't mount any challenge to him.
They did not spend anything. They just kind of abandoned ship, really.
Yeah, and that honestly surprised me because I know Christie is very popular. Obviously, after Sandy, he did a pretty good job. People are angry at him. I'm from actually near Seaside where the boardwalk collapsed. It just caught fire. I know a lot of people personally who still aren't in their homes and are very angry with Christie. But for the vast, a lot of people are happy with him, and he does very well with Democrats at a state level. And that's interesting because he is pretty Republican at a national level. He's very conservative. Obviously, he vetoed that gay marriage bill.
Yeah.
That was big, and to do that in New Jersey was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and isn't New Jersey, I think, lately considered the bluest state?
I don't know. I don't think we'll ever be the bluest.
Yeah.
I mean, there's California.
The legislator is majority Democrat.
Yeah, it's
correct.
It's a very Democratic state. We do have a couple congressional districts that are red.
Oh, sure.
I'm actually from a red district, and but the vast majority of the state, more than half. I shouldn't say vast majority. The way the state's laid out, it's got more Democratic congressional districts, and there are more Democratic people in the state. And it's voted for Democrats in every election, presidential election in memory that I could remember.
Yeah.
So
I'd imagine. Wait, does New Jersey have gubernatorial term limits or not?
I can't recall if they do.
I
haven't
forget.
heard them thrown around as far as Christie goes.
Yeah.
Obviously,
I was gonna say I predict that it's gonna turn back to the Democratic control if there aren't term limits, obviously if Christie runs again, and that depends on the whole 2016 debacle.
Yeah.
We'll cover that in a second. But I'd imagine it'd probably turn blue because he has to be moderate in that state, otherwise he won't win. If he was a Cuccinelli or someone, he would just lose downright.
Yeah.
So he has to play the moderate card.
And the other thing I'd like to point out with that election that was interesting is it would have been a great place for the Democratic Party to attack him and discredit him a little bit, and they did not take that chance. Yeah. And that's something that I see as a strategic failure if they want to mitigate his chances at winning in 2016.
I think the Democrats actually played it smart. I don't think they wanted to. I think they wanted to make sure that the moderates were still there. I think they almost like strategically like didn't want to challenge the moderates in order to. It's sort of a complex strategy, but it's sort of like I'm thinking of a good way to explain this. They know that Christie's so popular that they don't want to waste political capital that could backfire on them.
Yeah.
Versus it's a lot easier to downplay and criticize people like Cuccinelli or more the Tea Party people. I think the Democrats actually played it smart since they avoided essentially hot water.
I understand what you're saying. I see Christie as a fairly large threat nationally in a couple years. And that might not pan out. I mean, who knows? I mean, Romney was governor once in Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, my fear is that the Republican Party might just go so far to the right that he's considered too moderate for them, which is considered just... I think that's personally crazy, but...
Well, it's interesting you say that, because actually at CPAC last year, Rand Paul won the straw poll.
Yeah.
He got 25% of the participants in that, and I believe Christie got second. One of the people I live with pointed out a poll that came out from the exit polls after the election, and it indicated in New Jersey, Christie could have beaten Hillary. I can't say it correctly because I have a bit of a stutter, listeners. But Secretary of State Clinton, he could have defeated her if the vote had been that day. Which I think is very interesting because she is...
I think time is going to hurt Christie. But it depends, but I think time might hurt Christie.
I have to agree with you on that. Right now, he is on a peak. He got through Sandy. He did a great job. He called out the Republican Congress on the delaying of the funds, which made him look like a nonpartisan to a point. And
But he's going to have to fall sooner or later. I mean, I just predict that at some point. I think he's going to face some serious challenges. But yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, my theory, and I guess it's more broader theory, I don't know if you agree with this. So this is my theory of the Republican Party. In 20 to 25 years, as the sort of older, crazier people die, it's going to slowly but surely turn into basically the Libertarian Party.
It's actually really interesting you bring that up. I actually wrote a paper on this last year where I went through who libertarians are. And they are generally younger, and they're generally white males. And the Republican Party is generally young, or is older white males, obviously. But a lot of their demographics are what libertarians are.
Yeah.
And that's interesting to see. And then you're seeing this with people like Rand Paul, Congressman Amash, obviously Ron Paul from ages past, the godfather, if you will, of libertarianism in the United States. But It's interesting you bring that up because I very much believe in that. And it's a lot of what the social values of the Republican Party, what they hold near and dear, come from the Christian right, which is a relatively new phenomenon.
Yeah, that really happened in the 80s. Yeah, exactly. And I think, the truth is Democrats and Libertarians, at least on social and war policy, Okay, so here's actually the interesting part. So Democrats are actually in two wings, too. There's, the old lefties like me who, basically share the libertarian social side. So
the reasonable ones.
Yeah, we don't like war. We don't like the government in our bedrooms. So we're okay with birth control and abortion and gay marriage. It's who cares? But then there's this sort of new Democratic side, which is kind of pro-war. I wouldn't say they're socially conservative, but
I wouldn't argue pro-war so much as pro-intervention on a humanitarian level.
Sure,
I know the point you're making now, and I think we got to frame that correctly. Otherwise, it might confuse people and inflame.
No, I agree. I'm not necessarily pro-war, but they're a little bit more, quick on the trigger too. I would say, they're less anti-war than the traditional lefty. Yeah. So yeah, but I think. That's the problem is that I think on social issues, Democrats and Libertarians could go a long way into legalizing marijuana, allowing gay marriage, all those stuff, which do a lot of good. But then you have this crazy extreme factions on mostly the Republican side. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Right now,
on social issues.
It's only like 30 people, by the way.
Yeah, but enough to actually do things. Yeah. And Ted Cruz and
Well, it's funny though, because with the conservative values that the Republican talks about, they're all about minimal government.
Yeah.
And it's almost a farce that they talk about banning contraceptives, gay marriage. All these things are government regulated by what they suggest.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's almost it's very phony in a way to talk about not involving the government in your social life and then bringing them in and involving them.
Yeah, exactly. They're like, government shouldn't touch your dollars or anything, but we want the government in the bedroom. We want a regulation. What was Cuccinelli's famous thing that he wanted to ban oral sex or something?
Oh yeah, I did hear that.
So I think that craziness will hopefully die out with the older generations because it tends to be more of an old part of the party.
Yeah, and it's this happened. This just happens. As we talk about in class. There's just a party realignment right now, and I think the Republicans are trying to find themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a process, but I'm a big optimist, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me why I'm a Republican. How do you do that? Do you hate women? Do you hate gays? They asked me all this. Do you hate poor people? And no, obviously not. I don't hate any of those people inherently.
Yeah.
And I believe in working from the party to change it.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people my age, our age, believe the same thing. And I think that's going to be what's important in 20 years, like you said.
Yeah, like pushing it towards the more libertarian side, taking it back from the Tea Party, so to speak.
The other thing that the Republican Party, if they start to lose electorally, they're going to switch quick. Yeah. The Democrats did this in the 70s. They lost, they got their butts kicked. Mm-hmm. They switched quickly, and they put up a fight. I mean, they got crushed in the 80s, and then they came back in the 90s with Clinton.
Yeah.
I mean, and then now with Obama. Every party does this.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to change over time. So that covered New Jersey pretty well. Oh, you guys increased your minimum wage.
What that passed. I didn't even see that one.
Yeah, it did. Actually, by pretty big. I think it was like a 60-30 proportion or something.
Like I said, New Jersey's a blue state.
Yeah, so that was not surprising. So one quick note, there was actually an interesting election in Portland, Maine, which the city legalized marijuana to some use. Now, granted, technically, since it violates state and federal law, it's not really legal, but it's like a nice symbolic gesture.
It's a sentiment, and stuff like that's important because it reflects what the people want. And I think that will be the future. I honestly believe that it will be legalized nationally at some point. I don't really even think it should be a national regulation. I think that should be left up to states. But I believe that at some point in our future, while I'm still alive, marijuana will be legalized and anybody will be allowed to buy it.
I mean, it already is in like Washington and Colorado.
I think
Colorado.
Yeah, it was Colorado
and Washington. It's two states. It's like it's regulated basically like alcohol. California, my home state, will probably do its suit. They had a few. They had a proposition on it a few years back. It didn't pass, but I think
I remember. Yeah,
it's been several years. I think probably by 2020 or in the 2020s, California will probably pass it, and as other states might follow suit.
Just one other quick note: I forget which state. I think it was Washington State. They actually instituted a 25% tax on it on all sale of. Yeah. And I'm almost curious if that will bring back the illegal market for it there because it might cost too much. I'm not sure what their pricing scheme is yet. Yeah. But I think that's something that we're going to have to keep a watch on because if you tax something too much, people are...
Sure, but I think it's going to, over time, be controlled by the big businesses. Like, let's look at tobacco and smoking. I mean, they're legal, but most people buy it at the stores. They don't go bootlegging anymore.
Buy some Camel brand marijuana.
Actually, speaking on that, I was reading somewhere, and I haven't read this in a long time, but apparently a lot of these cigarette companies trademark a lot of these marijuana names, so in case it does get legal, they can instantly jump on the market, which is not surprising.
It's smart business.
Yeah.
It's smart that they're doing that. People do that with websites all the time. It's just being intelligent. They see what might happen, and it's worth the money that it costs now to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's turn to... how about Virginia?
Yeah, I mean, Virginia was a very interesting race in what it indicates. Do you want to speak first?
Sure. So I think it wasn't a surprise that McAuliffe won, but the surprise was, how close it was. Yeah. And I actually, even for the Republicans' sake, I don't think it's as good as that close because obviously for the Democrats, considering McAuliffe spent so much money, had the support of the Clintons. It was surprising that he only won by that much. But even for the Republican Party, I think this sort of embellishes them with the whole Tea Party faction. We can still be competitive, and sort of gives them a false sense of security.
See, the way I look at it is not support for the Republican Party, but a rejection of the health care bill. I don't believe that anybody really wanted Cuccinelli in there, but they know with him that he is so against the Obamacare exchange, as Virginia doesn't have one yet, that it would never happen.
Yeah.
And I think it was more a rejection of that, and I'm pray to God that the Republican Party understands that, though they probably won't.
I hope they do.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's going to be very interesting because, McAuliffe's governor, first time where the governor of Virginia and the president have been of the same party in, I believe, 40 years. So, very interesting situation there. It's going to be tough with him, obviously, with the Republican Assembly, I believe.
Legislature.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. But he's a corporatist Democrat. He's a sellout. Cuccinelli was a bit of a sellout too. I mean, no one really liked either of them.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, both parties just found bodies and put them in suits. And
essentially,
I mean, it was not.
No, it wasn't an entertaining race.
Oh, it was pretty entertaining.
I mean, okay, actually, I take that back. It was actually really entertaining, but I wasn't enthusiastic for any of the people running.
You didn't vote for them based on policies. Essentially, you voted on them basically on what you wanted as far as the state's future. You didn't vote for them because you like them necessarily. I mean, neither one of them is that likable as far as politics goes. McAuliffe, he's never served an office. It's insane what they've done there.
Yeah. So. Just a quick note: the Libertarian candidate actually got 7%. That was a pretty decent showing. You probably most of the moderate Republicans and some of the independents jumped ship.
Well, I would assume that a lot of the people who voted for the Libertarian just really didn't like either candidate.
Exactly.
And it's Libertarians first of all. They don't like anybody.
Yeah.
That's the great thing with that. You could blame everybody for America's problems because we haven't done them yet.
Yeah.
But it is a great showing that he managed to get 7% of the vote, and I think that does in Virginia, no less.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's more than the difference between the two candidates.
Oh, it's well within the difference.
Yeah.
I mean, there was less than 2-3 points, right?
Yeah,
yeah, and it's 7 percentage points that he won. I mean,
it's like double, triple.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen an election like that with the Libertarian candidate doing that well in a contentious election. I mean, albeit it might be because it was contentious that he did so well. I mean, you can't look at the causality of that and know for sure, obviously.
Sure, but it was definitely a strong showing for a third party.
Yeah.
So with that being said, let's turn to the New York mayoral race. So I was ecstatic. Obviously, you might disagree, but Bill de Blasio, my man. I really like this guy. Very progressive. First Democratic New York City mayor in, I think, 20 years.
Since the 80s.
It's beautiful. His family is awesome. They look so enthusiastic. It was amazing. He's gonna stop, and frisk. This is a democratic progressive dream right here.
I mean, I do have to agree. The stopping of the stop and frisk program, I think, is an admirable goal for him to do, and I honestly believe he will do it. It's an awful thing. It violates so many constitutional rights, in my view, and obviously yours as well.
Yeah,
and it's a great thing that he's going to do that. I'm just curious about the financial future of New York City as far as tax rates and how businesses will function there, whether or not they'll want to stay there. Obviously, it's New York City. You don't just pick up and leave from New York City. It's the financial capital of America, and some argue the world. But
and that could actually work to his advantage. But I was actually going to say one quick thing that's sort of separate is that I just feel like New York City's mayor has some of the most power of any mayor really in the entire United States, because people are actually paying attention to this race, and it's what does it mean for New York? No one cares about the LA mayor. No one cares about the Boston mayor. In fact, the only mayor that's sort of comparable is Chicago with the dailies. That was really powerful. But in today's day and age, I feel like New York is the only mayor that's really prominent and really has a lot of influence.
That is very true. I think some of that is because the mayor of New York controls New York State to an extent. He's able to influence great amounts of power over the governor, and it's a very strange relationship in everything I've seen. I know who the mayor of New York is. I often forget who the governor of New York is.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's Cuomo or
Yeah,
something.
Cuomo. Yeah,
But I'm more like I know Bloomberg like that
Yeah.
like that name like I knew right away.
Giuliani.
Yeah, I know them right away. But like the
Gosh.
other positions are a little less. I don't. Okay, I'm from LA. Okay, I know who my mayor. I forget his name, but like I know who he is
Yeah.
and what his positions and stuff. But I had to like look. I didn't know till after he was elected. Like
Yeah.
And apparently Boston had a mayoral race that I did not know till today.
I didn't even know it
They
happened.
apparently
Just now.
they had a mayor race.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right, everyone. Boston had another election, but no one was paying attention to that.
Yeah. I think New York is special.
Yeah, it's a unique case.
It's New York is where a lot of people came from. It's where a lot of people entered the United States. It's also recently, it's been obviously the awful thing that happened about, I guess, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Almost 30, it's 12 and a half years ago, essentially. That put New York into so many people's minds. And at least on the East Coast, I don't know how it is on the West Coast.
Yeah.
On the East Coast, New York is the city. When you talk about the city, you're talking about New York. I mean, I'm between D.C., Philly, and New York, where I live in New Jersey, and New York is the city. That's how everybody talks about it. That's the first thing you think of when somebody says the city.
Sure.
And I just think there's almost a love for it and a hatred at the same time, because a lot of people love it, a lot of people hate it, and I think it's just this great thing in America that we all like to talk about, at least over here.
Yeah, West Coast is obviously very different given the geography and everything. It's a lot more laid back. There's not like the city. There's not like even LA for Californians isn't really the city. I mean, it's like the main city, obviously, but because the cities are spread out so large that there's a little bit of disconnect, and also not only that, but people don't really have a love-hate. It's more like they like it.
Yeah.
They definitely like it. Californians, we like our cities, but it's not like a super love or super antagonistic relationship. And California is a very unique state politically in that the economy really comes from the south with tourism, Hollywood, and then LA Port, which is the largest port in the United States. But all the politics happens in the Berkeley, Sacramento area in the north. So the state is very weird in that positions of power, the economics and the politics are sort of split up within the state.
Yeah, I see the point you're making. It is, it's...
In New York, it's more like the same thing and more centralized on the East Coast.
Well, the thing is, like, New York is a smaller state, and then New York City is so concentrated. LA is huge.
It's huge.
The city is, I think, half the size of my county. I was looking this up the other day.
Yeah.
And New York, it's 450... I'm sorry, LA City metropolitan area, I believe, is 450 square miles.
That's
something
huge.
around that. New York is, I think it's actually, it's relatively big, but the concentration of people there is so much greater.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's also the New York City skyline, which almost anybody could identify.
Oh, yes,
which
definitely.
is, people just pay attention to New York. It's a strange phenomenon.
If any, like, in LA, like, it's like a nice city, but no one cares the politics so much. But even I, on the West Coast, even before I came to America, if anything big happened in New York, and of course 9/11's the big one, but if any even new, like from this soda ban, this small thing and happening to a very small segment of people, LA knows about it. It's like that big, and New York has that influence. I think Bill de Blasio, he's taking a real big position of power, and obviously I like it a lot because of his progressive views and stuff like that. But it's also interesting, the interracial family, because his kids and everything. He's one of the few politicians who has an interracial family, and there's evidence that that's actually lacking in terms of the number of politicians with interracial.
Mm-hmm. It is important to have that. It is representative of us. I mean, this is obviously the population of white people in America is going down as a percentage of America.
Yeah,
and it's great to see minorities taking roles of leadership like that, and it shows that America is changing. I'm not ever going to argue racism is dead. It never will be. It will always exist, and it's an awful thing. But we can do everything we can
things
to
are
combat
changing.
it.
I think it's kind of sad though that I'm not even talking about Hillary Clinton, that we haven't elected a woman as president, considering Pakistan had a female prime minister. The UK has, many South American countries. We're like one of the few advanced democracies in the world that hasn't had any sort of female head of government.
That is something that I think will change. We also gave women's suffrage pretty late.
Yeah.
I mean, look how long it took us to have an African American president.
Yeah.
It took us 160 years.
Yeah.
I mean, or 150. I mean, it takes us a while to change, and I'm not arguing that's a good thing, but I honestly, wholeheartedly believe we will have a woman president one day, and I think it won't even be that long.
Yeah, I mean, it could be 2016.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Yeah, actually, let's talk about, first we'll talk about 2014 prospects.
Yeah.
So my theory is that I really don't know. I mean, I think it could go well for the Democrats with a shutdown, but I do know this. I think that if you saw the Alabama primary where they chose the establishment Republican or the Tea Party, I think people are seeing the Tea Party now for their true colors, and Republicans are scared, and I think they're going to jump back to the more establishment candidates in the primaries.
I'd have to agree with you on that. The Tea Party came out, and it was something I actually agreed with greatly until they got a little wacko with the social policies that they like to talk about. 2010 was weird. It was largely due, I think, to the Obamacare. What happened with that, how that bill was passed, that the Republicans managed to do what they did. And then they also did a great job firing up the base, which the Tea Party was great at. I mean, they showed up.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. Like, they showed up to all these things and were able to get some of their people elected. And I think the Republicans realized that they're not going to win at a national level with these people, and they need to fight back. And I think we're seeing that even in the House, because when the shutdown happened, you could tell Boehner was upset.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to be the Speaker of the House that just had a government shutdown, and it just makes the party look so weak and uncoordinated. And they're going to have to get themselves together for 2014. In my view, I don't think there will be any really gains or losses on either side. I mean, I think a few seats will go to the Democrats.
I think with gerrymandering, it's just basically going to stay the same.
I mean, the other thing is most people are actually happy with their representative. It's kind of funny that Congress's approval rating.
Yeah, I actually don't like that. Like, obviously, not only do I come from a red area, California, but I mean, my guy's pretty out there too. I mean, not a Tea Party person per se. My congressman is Howard McKeon, better known as Buck McKeon. But I mean, I think there's a lot of dissatisfaction. I think this is actually the first time where there's actually a lot more dissatisfaction with your own representative. Not that that's universal, but I think there will be some backlash.
Well, I think what might actually be interesting to keep track of is what kind of backlash there will be in the primaries.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these Tea Partiers might find themselves being primaried, and that doesn't usually happen for an incumbent. I mean, it's almost unheard of. Nobody challenges the incumbent from their party.
Yeah, I think the Tea Party is going to realize that this was not a smart move, and the Republicans know they have to take care of this because it just leads infighting and really helps out the Democrats. Because I know, just an example, in the 2012, all the fighting made Obama look very strong at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And it took a lot of time out of Mitt Romney's hands.
Well, I think the other thing with the Tea Party is we need to remember they don't necessarily want to be elected.
Yeah.
I think they're more about pushing what they believe and trying to get the Republican Party as a whole over to the right.
Sure. The scary thing is that they are elected, though.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, obviously there's always freaks in anything.
Yeah.
30 people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Well, I thought it was 90 from the last
90?
measures.
I thought it was
more
than that.
I guess Tea Party affiliate
favored candidates.
Yeah, Tea Party affiliate is like a very weird term because it's not an actual party, so it's a bit.
Well, it's like Rand Paul. Senator Rand Paul is technically a Tea Party candidate who was elected.
Yeah, so it's a very Tea Party is just a confusing label in some ways, but you might disagree with this, but I mean this is just sort of a personal pet peeve I have is I don't like how the Republicans can sort of go that crazy, but the Democrats aren't allowed to go equally to their proportion. Like, you don't see any Occupy Wall Street people, so to speak, in Congress, or you might find a couple. Like, okay, maybe Bernie Sanders, but, generally the Democratic Party is so... Like, I'm actually almost mad at the Democratic Party for caving in too much and being too moderate and not being progressive enough, but I don't like the false equivalency where, they call us extreme, but in reality... Proportionally, we're a lot more moderate than some of the Republican members of Congress in proportion to the Republican Party.
The thing with the Republican Party is they're very good at organizing.
Yeah.
They're great at a local level, and that's where the Tea Party flourishes, and that's why they are as strong as they are. The Democratic Party almost just doesn't care about local things.
Yeah.
They very much are a national party who are focusing. They're already looking at 2016.
Yeah.
Both parties are, but the Democrats are probably looking at it a lot more.
Yeah.
And that's just something to note in party differences. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. In 2014, like I believe like half the states are having a gubernatorial election. I know it'll be the first election I vote in because California will be having a governor's race and everything else.
Yeah,
obviously,
the midterms and
it's gonna be interesting. Yeah. But I feel like at least in the federal House level and federal Congress level, I don't think so much is going to change. Perhaps like at least the sheer numbers. I mean, maybe the people might change with the primaries and stuff, but I think the problem is gerrymandering and sort of one thing I like what California does is we have like an independent commission, which has been advocated by a lot of political scientists, and I would like to see more states go to an independent commission model. It just sounds smart. It's not really a political issue. It's not like raising taxes or anything. It sounds like a fair issue to independent commission. Rather than it just seems automatically biased if you put it in the hands of the state legislature.
And I guess my only thing with that is everybody hates gerrymandering unless they're the ones doing it.
Sure, but the people can vote on this. Like California, we had a referendum, and so the people obviously understood that, and trying to force it onto a ballot would be, I think, a good measure. Because I think the people, if they were explained properly what it was, would easily be in favor of an independent commission.
Yeah. But, that's another problem with the American voter, the average American voter. They don't have the time for that, and it's hard to educate on all these things.
You know what Obama should do? He should sign an executive order making Election Day a federal holiday. It'd be so simple. It's so simple. Like you don't have to. You could do a constitutional amendment, but just like at least for a one-time thing, like why? I still don't know why to this day we make it on a Tuesday. That's not protected by any federal work law.
It's just the tradition of America. I know it's silly, but we're very much a traditional country in many ways.
But it's dumb. It's very bad. But it's actually bad. If we care about democracy and the tradition of democracy, you want everyone to have the access to participation. So, not even talking about voter IDs because I already covered that. And it's a whole other can of worms.
We don't need to bring that up.
But just in terms of the physical day itself, I think should be either moved to a Saturday or Sunday. Or at the very least, something that could be done immediately is just pass a bill making Election Day a federal holiday.
It is something that is it is interesting, and it's hard to talk about. I do agree that ballot access should be easy, should be something that all people can get to.
Yeah.
A holiday, that could work. I don't know the reality of making it happen. I think is very little.
I mean, I'm pretty sure the president could sign because I think George Bush made a certain day a federal holiday. It was like in a small executive order, but it happened. So there's nothing stopping a president from doing it.
It's just it comes down to states' rights, in my view. The states have most control over election issues,
That's true.
I see that as a federal government encroachment on those rights. And that's why I'd want to be careful.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is it's the greater good, and it's not encroachment if you're just making it like a holiday.
Yeah, but
and I would argue and at the very least, the president does have jurisdiction or at least federal elections. That would be perfectly fair, like midterms and presidential races.
The only thing is with arguing for the greater good is you can't say that because legally some things just aren't okay, and it'd be great to do. I don't like watching American flags burn, but I don't believe we should make it illegal. It's stuff like that where we need to recognize that just because something would be better doesn't necessarily mean we should do it.
Oh no, I agree, but I agree with that principle. But I think in this specific case, there's not much of a conflict. But again, we could go.
Well, that also comes down to dirty politics to a point. The Republicans, I'll admit it, don't want people showing up. They want them to be at work, not able to go vote. And that's a tactic, and that's why I also think there'd be a lot of problems getting that kind of thing put into place.
Yeah. I mean, it'd definitely be a political challenge. And it's the whole, something we talked about, it's like Congress is not going to pass a law putting term limits or limiting their benefits, which I think would be awesome if they did, but they won't.
Well, just remember, that's a whole nother topic. We probably shouldn't get on that tangent.
Well, we're wrapping up, so if you have any final thoughts, go ahead.
I think just with the elections, it's going to be interesting. A lot of people are looking at 2014 and 2016. I think it's a little early to be doing that. I mean, remember with, was it John Edwards? Everybody had him, or was it Edwards? I forget his first name. He was the running mate with John Kerry.
Yeah, John Edwards.
Everybody had him tipped with 2008, and that didn't work out, obviously. So there's going to be a lot of changes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't like speculation too much. I mean, this is fun. I mean, we
this is fun,
we can talk about short term. Like 2014 is a little bit more fair.
Yeah,
It's
that
only
one,
a year away. But the fact that people are talking about 2016 before Obama was inaugurated, even though that's inauguration, and they're talking about 2016, I think that's just crazy. People are making speculations way too quick.
Well, I also think it's just like it's fun.
It's
fun for Americans to talk about.
But I'd rather have news covering real issues instead of projections that don't really have any basis in facts since it's too far out.
Yeah, I mean, the news is there to serve what people want to a point. I mean, obviously they also push what they want to, but people want to hear about that because it's kind of fun for them to talk about it, and the news is going to report it because of that. Obviously, a lot of it's ungrounded.
Yeah.
But it's
I mean, it's like football or anything, making projections for the future. I mean, people are doing that right now with NFL, the NBA, hockey.
Mm-hmm.
So with all that stuff. That was a good podcast. So if you have any final thoughts,
I hope all the listeners comment. I'd love to see a discussion open up. I'm sure a lot of people might have a problem with a few of the things we've said between the two of us. It's okay.
This is so non-mainstream that I don't even know if anyone will watch this. But please do, and show it to your friends if you enjoyed this. So that's going to conclude my 8th podcast. The topics we covered were the Obamacare website. The second topic we covered was the SNAP program or the food stamp program. And the third topic we covered was sort of what happened with the elections in 2013, what that means for the future. And we obviously went on some tangents and stuff like that. But I hope you enjoyed. Let us know if we